Hey everyone, we are really excited to be here with Sara Stock, and she is the founder of Stock Legal. Um, Stock Legal is one of our partners in the Dentist Advisors Partner Program. We were so excited to bring on Sara and Stock Legal as we have frequent questions that get posed to our advisors regarding transitions, acquisitions, team members. And there is one group that we work with in all of Dentist Advisors, and that is Stock Legal. And today we get to hear from Sara Stock as she outlines her business and areas that we see we can find the utilization or the application inside our dental practices today. So, Sara, we're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. And I have to tell you, I was just talking about you guys in the meeting before this. I had a meeting with these amazing dentists who are looking at succession planning, but also they have key associate dentists that need incentive equity, and they're trying to scale, and they're looking at DSO and group practice models. And so I was sharing all of the resources that you guys have on your website, which I think are unbelievable. So love the opportunity to get to share a little bit today with, your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. Excited to have you walk us through your deck and show us all things stock legal.
Excellent. Well, of course, starting out, we have some of our team in our beautiful office, and it's a building built in the late 1800s. So I had to show off the team a little bit here. It's a great way to kind of segue into the story. So, Stock Legal started about 10 years ago. I was an equity partner at a large regional law firm and made the decision to leave and start my own practice to work with the kinds of people that I'm really passionate about. They're entrepreneurs, small to medium-sized business owners. It's because that's how I grew up. I grew up in a family business. My family still runs Stock Transport, trucking company that now has over 100 employees and has grown for the last 53 years. But I grew up wanting to work with those types of clients, went to law school to service those types of clients, and then built out this practice where I've attracted these amazing lawyers who are sophisticated, who have worked on complex transactions, but really have a heart for working with entrepreneurs. All right, let's see. I've never operated a PowerPoint inside something like this, so fingers crossed that
Yep.
I can make it move. Let's see. Ah, there we go. Okay,
Yes.
the magic of technology. So I wanted to introduce your audience to the leadership team here at Stock Legal, because when you work with us, you obviously don't just work with me, you work with a team of 15 lawyers. And Sam Wallach is the chair of our corporate department. Sam does a lot of our dental work. And so, if you work with us, you'll definitely see his face. And then Dan Julius is our estate planner. And so he chairs our estate planning department. We've got a small group of amazing lawyers that practice in estate planning. So that's our leadership team here. And these are all of our practice areas. So the way Stock Legal has been built over the last 10 years is to provide all of the legal services that small to medium-sized business owners need on a regular basis. And that, of course, includes our dental clients. So, we help people form companies, we help them raise capital. If it's a contract, we draft it or negotiate it. We help our clients buy and sell businesses. We help them buy and sell and lease real estate. We help them develop real estate. As I mentioned, estate planning, intellectual property, and then commercial litigation. I would say that our dental practice is maybe 40% of our overall work these days. We got involved in the dental space back in 2017, where we had the opportunity to build our first dental service organization. And it was right about that time where I guess my eyes were really opened to all of the consolidation starting to happen in the dental industry. the entrepreneurship that was really starting to happen in the dental industry. And it's been so much fun to watch, dozens at this point of our dental founders have gone back and gotten their MBAs to really understand how to grow and scale a business. They're creative, they're curious, they're excited. They're so much fun to work with.
Yeah.
So
And Sarah, would you say that from the dental clients that you work with, that mergers and acquisitions currently is just on the kind of a hockey stick straight up trend, and and real estate as well, as it kind of goes hand in hand with the mergers and acquisitions?
it does, I mean, I think our clients that, in fact, I just had this conversation last week. We're waiting on an LOI this week with one of our clients who, they're young. I mean, they're not, in their 50s or 60s. They're young, and they're just accepting that this is the wave and they want to sell right before the wave crashes.
Mhm.
And so, we're seeing a tremendous amount of M&A in the dental space right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you're right. Real estate does kind of go hand in hand. Like we talk often with our clients about, how to, if you have excess net cash flow, how to buy real estate in a separate company, create or put a related party lease in place between that company and the operating practice, what it does from a liability protection perspective, how it creates an additional asset that just grows in value. And as part of these M&A transactions, you as an owner might end up with, I always put it in air quotes, passive cash
Mhm.
flow, right? Because real estate's really never passive. But, if someone's buying your clinic, ultimately they're going to keep that lease in place, continue to lease that real estate from you, that entity that owns it. And it's just another stream of income for you. So it's a smart move now, and it continues to be a smart move if you're looking to sell your practice.
Mhm.
Excellent. All right. Shall we continue on through this journey? All right. The 4 ways that we typically work with dentists, and I put them kind of in what feels like an order of operations to me, but it isn't necessarily an order of operations. So incentive equity, group practices, dental service organizations, and then M&A, right? We don't have enough time to delve, even any more than 5% into any of these topics, because I could ramble on for hours about, right? I geek out on them. I get really excited about them. So I decided to just focus really on 2 of the 4 today, so that you could get a sense of what, how we work with dentists on 2 of the 4. And they're the 2 that I've heard from your team, Spencer, that you get the most questions about, and they're incentive equity and dental service organizations. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about my favorite incentive equity strategy, which is a crawl, walk, run strategy. So when you think about incentive equity, the reason that you would use that as a legal tool is that you have a key employee, a key associate dentist, right? And at this point in time, the practice can't really operate without him or her in that seat, right? But of course, there are all of these interesting opportunities out in the market where people are offering all kinds of shiny things. Buy this practice, do this JV with us. So your associate dentist comes to you and says, hey, I'm being bombarded with all of these opportunities in the market. I really want to be an owner. What's my path here, right? That's usually the first time incentive equity comes on someone's radar. And so when that happens, we talk about, let's start slowly, right? Let's ease into incentive equity. Let's crawl before we walk. Let's walk before we run. And crawl is phantom equity. So phantom equity looks like equity, smells like equity, tastes like equity, but it's contractual equity and not true ownership, right? And I say testing the grounds for ownership with no strings attached, right? Because if ultimately that key associate dentist leaves, no harm, no foul, right? My cautionary tale here is that companies that jump into real equity to incentivize key employees often end up with what could be millions of dollars of stock loans on their books as they're trying to buy these people out when they leave, right? This is really a way to test if your key associate dentist is built for ownership, right? And you can even put some vesting around it, ultimately set it up so that you can test for whatever it is that you're looking for before moving into another version of ownership. And this is the point when I'm counseling clients where I pause and say, do you have any questions? Spencer, do you have any questions since it's just you and I?
I would just emphasize what a good way to crawl, walk, run with emphasizing the phantom equity. Yeah, we hear exactly what you are talking about, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for validating that. And the beauty of phantom equity is that it really does align economic incentives because you set it up like I call it a shadow cap table. So, your key associate dentist that is the recipient of phantom equity actually has on a shadow cap table a quote unquote ownership percentage. And when distributions are made out of the practice, he or she gets a distribution that is pro rata to their ownership interest, right? So they're getting money out of the practice as if they were an owner, but they don't have any voting rights. They can't sue you for information rights. There's no fight if they decide to leave and who's going to buy who out and for how much, right? So, those are the fights that sink businesses. And that's why we love to talk about phantom equity as a way to kind of baby step into real ownership. So the next, obviously, once we've learned how to crawl, comes walk. And when we're building out a trajectory for incentive equity for our clients, we talk about like maybe phantom is a year or 2 or 3, could be even 5. That feels a little long, but once you get to that point, right? You've seen, you've learned, you have some indication of whether or not this is the right person to really partner with you. And if that's the case, then we can look at what is traditional incentive equity, right? And we say based on entity type because there are limitations based on taxes and other things that I won't delve into that will determine what type of incentive equity we can use. But most common are profits interest and restricted stock, right? Both of those can have tax implications. Both of those can be tied to milestone vesting. And, both of those are used if you're building out a more complex legal structure like a group practice or a DSO in a way that can be really powerful. But if you just have one clinic or a handful of clinics, you can still use incentive equity as a way to bring that key associate dentist into ownership, often in a way that doesn't give them a vote on important matters, but does still allow them to truly be an owner and also to receive distributions as if they were an owner. So I'll pause here and say, Spencer, are you following me?
Yeah, and it's I like that you started this slide with as you have ownership talk to you about ways to incentivize, that it's tied to the, as you're mentioning here, different milestones or hitting different measurements in order for equity or simply just some payouts to go alongside the production of the business. It's just awesome. Love it. We hear about this a lot, that many offices are confused or not confused, just have a hard time putting together a plan that maintains the interest of their team members. How do you do it?
Well, and we call them vesting cliffs or production goals. They can be time-based. When you're with me for 3 years, this percentage vests. When you're with me for 5 years, this percentage vests. or you've hit these production goals, certain percentages vest at each production goal. And then you can work your way up to whatever feels comfortable, right? And we've been talking a lot about receiving distributions pro rata to your ownership percentage, but of course, it would be short-sighted of me not to say that we're also thinking about when the practice is sold, what percentage of that purchase price will go to either the phantom equity holder or the incentive equity holder, right? So, somebody who's thinking about scaling and exiting, right? Getting that key associate dentist in ownership in some way, shape, or form incentivizes them to build up the practice for a sale, if ultimately that's what your intention is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. And then I'll talk a little bit about run, which is the buy-in. And, we see this used, I would say most often when there's some sort of a succession plan in place, or, you have someone who starts out with you as just a key associate dentist, but that truly wants to be a partner, right? So, maybe your phantom equity worked phenomenally well. Your incentive equity gets your key associate dentist to 3, 5, 7, 10%, whatever that number may be. But you've got someone or a group of people that want to own 40, 45% of the practice overall, right? Well, when you get to that point, the founder of the practice really should be receiving compensation for everything that he or she has built over their career. And that compensation is a true buy-in. So, we've tested the waters, they're acting like an owner. All of those things are green light, green light, green light, right? Then we give them the opportunity to buy in. And, that could look like going out and having the practice valued so that we know what the value of the practice is. And then setting up, it could be a tiered buy-in where they're buying in over time. It could be a buy-in that happens that's, maybe funded by debt in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, but ultimately, getting to a buy-in place and getting it funded is typically the logical next step. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then the last thing that I'll add is that, well, this is how I talk to clients about the typical progression. It doesn't mean that we always do it that way, right? You might skip the crawl phase and skip phantom equity because you've got a key associate dentist that is asking for real ownership, or he or she is going to leave, right? So, it doesn't, and you might have, you might be bringing on a partner that wants to buy in right away. I just like to lay it out that way because it allows you to kind of think through logically what the various steps are.
Yeah. Very
Excellent.
good.
All right. Well, Spencer, if you don't have any questions on this, I'll jump to the next slide. I feel like I'm an instructor who's
Yep.
teaching a one-person class right now. Whoops. Let me go back here. All right, here we go. So this is my only slide with a bunch of text on it. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and say, dental service organizations are really complicated and they are really challenging to administer. They are the right move in a number of different scenarios. It could be that you want to build out a multi-state practice structure, right? It might be that you're scaling and your exit could be private equity, or you want to build out a monster DSO that ultimately is maybe going to be sold to another DSO. There are a lot of reasons why a DSO is a good structure. I just don't typically recommend it to smaller groups that don't have a huge vision to grow, because it becomes really hard to administer, right? It's expensive to administer. It's complex. And so, just that's my words of warning. Be careful. Don't bite off more than you can chew as you're thinking through this. And again, maybe think about baby stepping into it. But ultimately, as we're building out a DSO, here is what it actually looks like. And this is maybe the simplest of all DSO structures. So I'll tell you some things you probably already know. The corporate practice of medicine doctrine says that only dentists can own dental practices. And that's not applicable in every state, but it is applicable in the vast majority of states, right? And so when you think about, building out this DSO, you're doing it for two reasons, right? Number one, you're doing it for efficiency because you're expanding out. You're building out or buying a number of different clinics, and you want to consolidate all of your back office services into one organization. But you're also doing it because you might want to bring folks into ownership that aren't dentists, right? And when done right, and when done in compliance with every state's regulations, the DSO entity can be a place where non-dentists can have ownership. So we create this dental service organization entity. I have LLC here, it doesn't have to be an LLC. As a part of this structure, we put all of the non-clinical assets in the DSO, and all of the clinical assets stay in the clinics down here. And then we put management services agreements in place in between each of the clinics and the DSO. That's the primary document. There are often other documents involved, but I don't want to get too complicated here. This is an ownership here. This is a contract. I like to be really clear about that too. Ultimately, each of the clinics is owned by a dentist, right? And so typically how this works is that there's not much excess net cash flow to distribute at the clinic level because you're paying for all of these consolidated services, back office services at the DSO level. And that means that the DSO level, going back to our incentive equity conversation, becomes a brilliant place to grant incentive equity from. And if you think about it, it aligns incentives across all of these different clinics here. So everybody is working hard for the greater good instead of working hard for just their very specific clinic. So I'll pause. That's kind of the 30,000-foot view of how a DSO model works. I won't go into and drone on about all of the legal tools that go into them because everyone will fall asleep if I do. But Spencer, have you seen this DSO model before? Oh, did you hear me, Spencer? Or did
Yeah. I'm not sure. Let me just make sure that, yes, I have seen the model before. It's probably the most common asked question
Yeah.
in our office. And it's what the industry is working with the most. I mean,
Yeah.
what we're looking at right here, every dentist, I would say, that is looking to potentially transition in the next 10 years is going to have to be familiar with what you are showcasing right here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. There's a lot of curiosity about DSOs, how they work, what they look like. And so, and it can get very complicated. When you go into different states, you're thinking about sub DSOs under this DSO model, then the DSO structure becomes the model that we use when we go out on the acquisition path. It becomes the model that we use when we're raising capital, if we're looking for capital infusions and we're building cap stacks with bank loans and investors and the whole 9 yards. But that at some point in time, it's great to know and understand that, but those are hours long of conversations that I don't want to drag us too deep down into. But having an idea of what that structure looks like, practically how it works, and when the right time is to use it, I think it's going to be really valuable to your audience. And then the other thing I always add is that there are two key players that I always like to involve in building out a DSO structure. One is a CPA that is familiar with a DSO structure It's incredibly important, and you're going to need that person as you run your books and records for this company. So, getting a connection to that person and getting them involved early on is going to be critically important. The second is, there's some really great, I call them transaction advisors out there right now. Folks who can consult, who know this model, who can help you think through the financial piece of it, because we can build a really great legal structure, but we're not going to build out your financial projections for you, right? We're not going to build out strategy for how you're going to scale your DSO model. So, bringing those two other key players in is going to be incredibly important. And then, of course, having your financial advisor involved, helping you to think through, ask all of the right questions is an incredibly smart move as well. So, all right, beautiful. Well, I'll skip ahead then and just show you a few pictures of the team. Again, this is Sam, Dan, and I. We're in St. Louis in the middle picture. We've spoken at various dental conferences before. Some of these photos are from a conference that we spoke on. We talked about incentive equity and the crawl, walk, run strategy. This is just some of our awesome clients and what they're saying about Stock Legal. And then our final contact information. If you ever want to reach out to us, we do a complimentary 30-minute call or Zoom with every client that reaches out to us. That way you have a chance to get to know us. We have a chance to get to know you. And then for the vast majority of our clients, the way that it works when you start working with Stock Legal is the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is to send me all of your legal agreements, all of your operating agreements or shareholders agreements, employment agreements, leases, any incentive equity that you might already have. I'll ask you to send it to me. And then once we engage, we'll review those documents. Usually takes a couple of hours of billable time. And then after that review, we do an hour-long strategy session. It's a Zoom typically, where now that we know what your corporate house looks like, let's spend an hour strategizing on what you're looking to build and how you're looking to build it, right? Once we get to the end of that hour, if we're doing our job well, which we usually do, we have consensus on what the next steps are and what the strategy is. And with that consensus, we then often build out a fixed fee proposal for our clients. So a lot of the work that we do in building these companies and building out incentive equity or dental service organization structures, we do for a fixed fee at Stock Legal. So that's my only plug about one of our competitive differentiators. But I find people like to understand, like, what does it look like to work with us? So I wanted to share that as well.
That is so awesome. And Sarah, this is so everybody watching the same model that you were once familiar with Dentist Advisors. You took that 30 minutes to just get to know one of us. It's the exact same that Sarah is offering to you. Just take the 30 minutes, schedule the consultation to get to know Sarah and her team, and talk about a resource to have. It's there's no question. I'll reiterate that you will use these services at some point in your career, and it's likely over the next 1 to 5 to 10 years, and likely in all three stages of each of those timeframes. So you need Stock Legal in your corner. And all of this information is provided on dentistadvisors.com on the microsite. And Sarah, that was just we know how much more there is to share, and that was a very good introduction to Stock Legal services. So
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's really hard to condense something very complex into bite-sized parts and pieces. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks everybody for watching, and feel free to reach out to Stock Legal or to Dentist Advisors for us to give you an email introduction and so forth. So Sarah, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.